You recently put out a video in which you talked a little bit about your shifting conception of consciousness and whether or not it is indeed primary. Speak to maybe your own evolution of thought around that concept.
So I think I was, I'd almost made the complete transition in Soul Story, away from where I'd been, which was in a much more traditional idea, everything exists in consciousness. I've been teaching that. I've written, I mean, I've written all these books saying it, you know, it's like, and traveled around the world teaching it. And suddenly it looked like it wasn't right. And I had to negotiate that. And it came from Soul Story, because in Soul Story, I have this relational philosophy, which is really becomes stronger and stronger, which is like everything is relationship. And that goes right the way down. Everything's one thing in relationship with itself as all these different systems. And each system is reading in its own unique way the universe. And that reading of the universe is what will become what we think of as subjectivity. So you could say subjectivity goes all the way down, but I don't think it makes any sense to call that anything like consciousness, and it's very misleading. And the view which I really started to question was the common, especially Eastern mystical idea that there is a thing called consciousness, that everything exists within. And the approach to it, the theory that I started to develop that was working for me was, I work primarily, I think, kind of phenomenologically. I look at my experience for a long, long time and what I see is I'm a system, a human being. System sounds so mechanical, but a human being, still a system, and taking in all this information. And I know that I'm taking in the vast majority of it unconsciously, because, you know, I wasn't aware of my left foot. Oh, but I am now. And why am I aware of it now, and probably you are and anyone listening to it, and wasn't before, is because I put my attention on it. And so what seems obvious to me now is that what we call consciousness is a way of processing the information I'm taking in, and indeed the information within the system itself. So that what it looks to me like is that consciousness has evolved as a kind of a high definition processing. So everything is, you know, every system, right down to the simplest one, let alone a life system like the plants behind me, and is in some way reacting or interacting with its environment. Once you get life, suddenly the amount of information that's being taken in, it becomes enormous with the development of the senses. And also with life, some of that information really matters and most of it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that really matters is a matter of life and death or continuation or all the things that make a biological species maintain itself, that matters. The vast majority of its background. And that what it looks like has developed is that ability to read the environment has developed so that you can focus and read in high definition the stuff that matters, including the stuff that matters in yourself. And this is it. This is what it's like when it does that. Now so there you're going, look, so the experience, the conscious experience that I'm having is a very highly emergent level of the relationality which defines the whole universe all the way down. That's quite different to the idea that there is a thing or a presence or I don't even know what they called consciousness, which is what I would have said. And that somehow the ground is already conscious. I don't know what of or how it's conscious of itself, but what would that mean? How is it conscious? None of those things are answered. And it's fundamentally, well, there's two things I want to say, really. I want to say it's fundamentally what I now regard as a mythic understanding. And what I see, that I want to just divert into this, and then hopefully it's relevant.
Yeah, take your time.
Is what this isn't Soul Story, this is since Soul Story, but what I see is there are two types of anachronistic thinking which define the two things that I'm kind of in the opposition to. One is reductionist science. And the problem with reductionist science is it takes language which is appropriate to the foundational levels of reality, mathematics, for instance, the best language by far. And then it deals with human experiences with the same language. It was really just particles and mathematics and we can understand. And it's like, no, at this level of emergence, you need other things. because it's become about love
Hmm.
and beauty and music and all this stuff. And that language is not good enough. And then what I see with mythic thinking is it's the opposite way around. So it takes language which is appropriate to the human level and applies it to the very, very foundational level. So consciousness, that's not going to come for a while. That's anachronistic. Nearly always what comes with it is intentionality. There's consciousness and it wants to know itself. What's that? Where's that intentionality come from? Or it wants to love itself, or some mythic quality to get this. And that's the involution or the overflowing or the emanation and all of that stuff, which I was very attracted to, but now feel it really doesn't work. And I think it's perfectly natural that human beings did that, because human beings developed a language for the human level. They didn't develop it to understand physics for a long time. But now we have, and now we need to stop using that language for the lower levels. And then the last thing, which I can get into if you like to, is I looked at my arguments for why I believed that everything existed in consciousness. And I was shocked to see that I'd completely missed a complete fallacy, which is now obvious to me again, but for most of my life was not obvious. And if you want me to go through that, I'll happily
Yeah,
outline
well,
the
yeah, why don't
fallacy.
we'll do them both at the same time? So, yeah, how would you describe what that fallacy is?
Okay, so this is something you'll hear repeated again and again in people who were do similar things that I've done, but I'll deal with myself, so that's easier to criticize me. This is the way I do it in one of my best books called Lucid Living. I love that book. It's such a great book. It's another real bang short book, and it kind of nails, I think, this perennialist way of seeing things. And I think I nailed it so well, I saw what was wrong with it, which is a real shame because it was such a lovely book. and, and the argument I use there is a very common one, a phenomenological one, which is, look, let me do it really short. Everything you're experiencing is a sensation in consciousness. That's your actual experience. Your actual experience is everything exists in consciousness. Just look. Everything is that's the argument. And it's like you get it and you can see it like that. I can do it now. And it's like, ooh. But of course, what seems obvious now is the answer is in the question. Because you're going, have you ever experienced anything which wasn't a sensation in consciousness or a thought in consciousness? But what you've done in the question is you've gone further. There's a thing. Maybe you've just said there is what you're experiencing sensations in consciousness, or am I experiencing my room and the computer and looking at you? And that's not in consciousness. In fact, there is no, that's a reification. It's making a thing out of a verb,
Yeah.
which is that I am conscious of you and of the room. And what that left me with was, look, you can't argue from experience for anything, because the way in which you ideate will in part create what you experience. So it's self-validating.
Mm.
If you think in that way, you will experience it that way. But if
Hmm.
you think in a different way, or you ideate in a different way, you'll experience it in a different way. So that whole approach just collapsed for me
Yeah.
and left me free to enter new territory.
Yeah. Awesome.